All right, let's dive right in. We're heading into the high stakes world of digital investigations. A place where finding one tiny file can be the difference between a cold case and a conviction. And right at the heart of it all, there's a kind of battle going on, a digital forensics tool war.
So think about it for a second. When you delete a file, where does it really go? It doesn't just poof, vanish into thin air. It becomes this kind of digital ghost, leaving all these little traces and echoes behind. And the entire field of digital forensics, the whole shebang, is built on answering one simple question. How do you find that ghost and get it to talk?
Well, the very first step is to preserve the crime scene, just like in the real world. In the digital world, investigators do this by creating what's called a forensic image. Now, this isn't just a simple drag and drop copy. Oh no, it's a perfect bit for bit replica of the original drive. The whole point is to make an exact clone that is completely unaltered, so the original piece of evidence is never, ever touched. And this stuff is more critical now than ever before, right? Our entire lives are on our devices. We're talking about everything from corporate fraud and cybercrime to really serious criminal cases. Our computers and phones are often the number one source for crucial evidence. But, and this is a big but, for any of that evidence to actually hold up in court, it has to be absolutely reliable, and you've got to be able to prove it hasn't been changed.
So, how do you make sure nothing gets changed? You use one of these. It's called a write blocker. The easiest way to think about it is like police tape for a hard drive. It's a piece of hardware that literally, physically, stops any new information from being written onto the original device while they're making that forensic copy. It keeps the digital crime scene totally pristine. Okay, so once an investigator has that perfect, pristine image, they need the tools to actually dig through it. And for years, there's been this huge debate about which tools are better. Do you go with the expensive, well-known giants, or do you use the free, community-built challengers? This is the real clash of the toolkits. And this slide really breaks down the two philosophies. On one side, you've got the proprietary tools. Think of them as these mysterious black boxes. Their code is a secret, they cost a lot of money, but you get customer support and they have this long court-tested reputation. Then on the other side, you have open source tools. Their code is totally public, they're free to use, and they're built by this huge community of experts. And that open code, that's a huge deal, because it means anyone can look inside and see exactly how it works. So the research we're digging into today put the biggest names in the game to the test. In the proprietary corner, you've got the heavyweights, EnCase, and Forensic Toolkit, or FTK. And in the open source corner, you've got the Sleuth Kit and its popular sidekick, Autopsy, along with SIFT, which is a really powerful command line toolkit that a lot of old school investigators just swear by. So it all boils down to this, right? When you get down to the nitty-gritty, which approach is actually better at digging through all that digital noise and finding the truth? Well, this wasn't just some theoretical argument. To find out, researchers set up a really intense head-to-head competition to see how these tools actually performed when the pressure was on. Let's take a look at the ultimate recovery test. The way they set it up was just brilliantly simple. First, they took a hard drive and put a specific set of files on it, so they knew exactly what was supposed to be there. Step 2, they either deleted those files or, for a much tougher test, they completely formatted the drive. Then, step 3, they took that perfect forensic image we talked about. And finally, they unleashed all 4 toolkits on that image to see what ghost data they could actually find. And that's really the key here. They were testing 2 super common scenarios. Recovering a deleted file is kind of like tearing the table of contents out of a book. The pages are all still there, you just don't have an easy map to find them. But recovering data from a drive that's been formatted, that's like trying to read a book after it's been through a paper shredder. It's a way harder test of a tool's deep diving skills. Now check this out. This is a little snapshot of the results, and it's really interesting. In this specific test, recovering 6 Word documents that were deleted on a Windows machine, you can see the big 3 tools, EnCase, FTK, and Autopsy, they all found every single file. Perfect score. But the SIFT toolkit only found 4. Now, this doesn't mean SIFT is bad. It probably just means that as a command line tool, it might need a bit more specific instruction from the user, whereas the other tools have automated that part. It just goes to show you, different tools can get you different results. And zooming out, this was a pretty common theme across all the tests. Most of the tools were actually pretty good at finding those simply deleted files. But when it came to the much harder tests, the formatted drives, or when they switched over to a Linux system instead of Windows, the results started to get a lot more varied. There was no single tool that came out on top in every single category.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, the study came to a really clear, really important conclusion. When it comes to digital forensic tools, there's just no such thing as a silver bullet. In fact, the most important point is right here, in this quote straight from the research. The best practice, the smartest, most defensible strategy is to use more than one tool when you're doing these investigations. Because at the end of the day, the goal isn't just to find something, it's to prove it. And the strongest, most rock-solid evidence always comes from validation. So let's just break this verdict down. First, no single tool is the best in every single situation. But that's not a weakness, it's actually a strength. Think about it. An investigator can use a big proprietary tool like FTK to find a crucial piece of evidence, and then use an open source tool like Autopsy to find the exact same piece of evidence independently. When two different tools built with two totally different philosophies come to the same conclusion, wow, that evidence becomes incredibly powerful and so much harder to challenge in court. So it turns out the whole tool war idea was maybe the wrong way to look at it all along. It's not about which tool wins, it's about how they can all work together. The real secret to finding the truth is using these different tools to validate and verify each other's findings, building a case that's as close to bulletproof as you can possibly get. And that kind of leaves us with a much bigger thought, doesn't it? In a world where our digital footprint can mean the difference between guilt and innocence, between freedom and prison, the integrity of how we find evidence is, well, it's everything. And the answer, it seems, isn't about finding one perfect tool. It's about a relentless, careful process of checking and double-checking, all to make sure that what we call evidence is actually the truth.